You are welcome to today's story. I have a friend whose name is Ifoma. Ifoma told me a story that happened to her father. Ifoma said that my father was a photographer. My father lived in the city of Onitsha, southeastern part of Nigeria. He was a well sought after photographer in that city because he was one of the first persons to learn the skill called digital printing. Then whoever knew that skill was making money. In fact, the companies offered to pay him twice a month. He was paid weekly. That means twice a month. My father was making money. They wanted to open a new branch in the city of Aba in Abia State. They sent my father to come over to Aba and work in Aba. They were paying him handsomely, and my father was newly married to my mother. He had everything going for him, but what my father didn't have was vision. And when I say vision, what do I mean? I will explain. When my father came to the city of Aba with my mother, they lived in a neighborhood where they had neighbors who were indigenous of the city called Ngwa. After a while, my father was living with lots of persons. In fact, he was the happening man. He was the happening guy. There was constant cooking and eating. I mean, the money was flowing. What do you do with the money if it is flowing? Eat it, of course. That was what my father was doing. When I say my father had no vision, he wasn't thinking about the future. He wasn't thinking about investment. He wasn't thinking about savings. He wasn't thinking about buying properties. He wasn't. So it happened that these neighbors of ours, who their father died and they didn't have money to bury the man, lo and behold, they came to my father because they knew he was well-to-do. Mind you, my father was a tenant in someone's house. They came to my father and said, please, our father is dead. We want to bury him and we don't have the money. Could you please come and buy this our father's house? This is a 2-story building. And how much was it? I'm talking about early 80s. That's what I'm talking about. My father said, how much? They said 300 naira. And my father wasn't budging. He was like not interested. They even offered to say, please give us half of the money and maybe a month or two you could finish it. My father did not take this opportunity. When these people went home, my mother came to my father and said, please buy this house. You know you're paid twice in a month. Buy this house so that we can stop being tenants in someone else's house. We can own our own home, become the landlord of the house, and stop paying rent. You know what? My father was not looking that direction. He wasn't thinking in that direction. He didn't think that buying a property was something that was worth doing. This is something that landed on your laps like that. In fact, these people offered that you could even pay twice. And my father wasn't budging. My father wasn't interested. Because my father brought in some of his siblings who were living with him. They came and requested for school fees so that he could pay their school fees in the university. My mother said, please, these school fees you want to pay, why don't you just defer it for 2 weeks? By that time, your next salary will come in. You could pay it, but go and pay for this house. And how much are they asking for at the moment? 150. You could pay 150 later. My father said no. In fact, my father thought my mother was against him paying the school fees of his own brothers. Remember, they were living in our house, eating at our house. He wanted to become a problem. They even quarreled about it. And my father insisted that he wasn't going to buy the house. My God. And it wasn't like he was making any plans to buy any property in the future. Do you know, my father took money, gave his brothers the money to go and pay their school fees in the university. Lo and behold, after a while, we discovered that those brothers of his were actually not in school. These neighbors of ours who wanted to sell their house had gotten someone else who paid for the house and owned the house. Wow. In 2013, my father lost his job. And that was the beginning of the problems we started having. We're now in university. My father could not afford to pay our school fees. My father could not even afford to pay for rent. I remember how many times we were driven out of the house. I remember how many times the landlord embarrassed us. I remember how many places that my father begged his friends, let's squat in your house for a while. I remember how many places that our properties were scattered in because we had to put the properties in different people's houses so that we can gather ourselves together and now come and take them. Can you imagine that? In 2021, my father died, and till his death, my father will always be telling us that this is one of the mistakes he made in his life. Some of us in our family were not born then. So he will always be telling us this story about the mistake he made. That was a mistake of not investing in the future. That was a mistake of not buying a property, of buying a house. I am even thinking that if my father had bought that house and was making money from that house through tenants, I'm even thinking that he wouldn't have even died when he died. Because I think that at some point when he wasn't doing anything else, he was now staying in the house. He will stay and stay and stay. In fact, my father was not living for anything. He just had to die. Why are we telling you this story? We are telling this story because there are some of you men who are getting money right now. You can be a young man or even a young woman. You are getting money right now. You're making money. You're not thinking about the future. You're not thinking about investments. You're not thinking about savings for the future. What you're thinking is buying an iPhone, buying liabilities, buying cars. These are good if you have your future sorted out. That's what we are saying. My father did not think about the future. He did not secure the future. That was why he paid dearly for it. Please sit down and think about the future. If you are making money right now as a young man, it is high time you sit down and start buying properties. You don't need to have all the money. You don't need to have all big money. You can start small, start saving small. And then you can secure your future. Thank you so much.